Night shift security at a haunted warehouse. I unveiled a sinister secret after 30 dreadful days. The night shift at the Aurora warehouse felt like stepping into a nightmare. Alex, a worn-out father of two, had spent countless hours trudging through the decaying building's chilling corridors, where shadows lurked in the corners, and the air smelled of rust and decay. This wasn't just a job, it was a descent into madness. He had only taken this position because his family depended on it, and every waking moment screamed at him to keep those decisions alive for his kids. But as he took his flashlight in hand that night, unease clawed at him. The first few nights passed slowly, marked only by the eerie creaks of the old metal structure settling and the flickering fluorescent lights that hummed ominously above. But soon, the atmosphere shifted. Something was wrong, a palpable, living dread seemed to pulse within the very walls. Skepticism dripped away as whispers flitted across the dim light, curling around him like smoke, sliding beneath his skin. "Alex, come find us," they breathed, tugging at his thinning sanity. First, he brushed it off, convincing himself it was exhaustion, but every third gasp of silence was quickly followed by menacing whispers, their intentions unknown. He flinched at every echo, visited by shadows that danced beyond those moments of sight. "Get a grip," he muttered, but fear burrowed deeper inside him, gnawing relentlessly with each tick of the clock. Then, one night, his heart racing from an unseen pressure, he stumbled upon old notes tucked away within stacks of dusty crates. The shaky handwriting bore testimonies of spirits. "You must not go to the basement." The words seemed to vibrate with a terrible urgency, naming a place long forgotten, but harboring dark memories. Strange things happen there. People vanish. Trust fades. The deeper he dug, the more sinister the truth became. The very leaders of the town he respected had traded souls in secrecy, not looking back. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Seated at the precipice of despair and discovery, Alex felt a scream rise up within him. How was it possible that the community he trusted could mask such darkness? A flicker of movement caught his eye, shadows blending into the corners of his vision like ripples in water. They were everywhere, and he felt like he was being watched. If whispers were now escalating into an urgent shout for attention, what awaited him in the basement? The thought of revealing this truth to the world felt daunting, and worse, dare he risk the safety of his family? His fingers trembled as he fished out his cell phone to call someone. Anyone. But the battery flickered ominously, quickly waning like the warmth of hope. The sound of laughter, his children's laughter, echoed eerily through the rusting walls, haunting him as the hair on the back of his neck prickled. It couldn't be. They were safe at home, right? He felt the icy fingers of dread tighten around his heart, a relentless urgency gnawing at his chest, leaving him tethered between fear and action. The warehouse held secrets far greater than he ever imagined, and thus the true horror had only just begun to unravel. The flashlight flickered, a pathetic light source in the oppressive darkness enveloping the warehouse. Alex's heart pounded like a war drum, each beat thunderous in his ears. "Stay calm," he whispered to himself, but his voice sounded foreign, swallowed by the shadows that loomed heavier with each breath. He clutched his phone, its battery teetering on the edge of death, just like his hope. Suddenly, the laughter grew louder, a distorted echo ringing through the dilapidated structure. It stopped his heart. It was unmistakably his children's voices. "Dad! Daddy!" The cries danced through the halls, spinning into a whirlwind of joy and terror. But why? They shouldn't be here. This place was a tomb, a well of darkness. He gritted his teeth. No, it wasn't real. His mind was unraveling. Tricking him, he turned toward the basement door, its hinges rusted and swollen, the wood darkened with age and stains he dared not examine closely. The air thickened, warmth from the fluorescent lights faded, replaced by a bone-chilling cold that crept into his bones. "There's nothing down there," he told himself, replaying the warning scrawled in shaky handwriting. Don't go down. Panic and curiosity clashed, both demanding his attention, but then a scraping sound. It resonated from the depths below, a slow, deliberate gnawing, like nails scraping against bone. He leaned closer to the door, pressed his ear against its cold surface. It was then he heard it, a whimper, a familiar tone that sent ice slithering down his spine. "Help us." The plea felt like a jagged knife in his gut. He shook his head, squeezing his eyes shut. He couldn't lose them, not like this. It pushed him against the wall. His breathing quickened, the thud of his heart a raging tempest in his chest. The laughter morphed into wails, each echo sharpening into a cry for rescue, the sound clawing at his very essence. In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited. It was time to act. He needed to discover the truth. Slowly, he unclenched his fist, summoning the resolve to grasp the cold doorknob. But as he did, the door burst open violently, revealing darkness so complete it felt alive, as if it swallowed the light. In a flash of instinct, he stumbled back, barely catching himself. From the abyss, shadows poured out like spirits freed from their prison, coalescing and swirling in a frenzied dance. Alex, the whisper was soft yet compelling, a voice that promised secrets untold. "Join us." The flickering lights above buzzed and blinked, as if they too were warning him to flee. But the thought of his children drove him forward. What if they were trapped? What if he didn't act? The voices swirled around him, wrapping tighter, urging him, begging him. With a surge of adrenaline, he stepped into the dark, a primal instinct pushing him beyond reason. Each step felt heavier, the shadows embracing him like a cold fog. The air was thick with dread and secrets, an ancient stench that threatened to drown him in despair. As he descended deeper, the temperature plunged, and the whispers intensified, morphing into a cacophony of laughter and cries for help. In the stifling gloom, something shuffled in the darkness. It wasn't the voices of his children anymore. It belonged to something far older, something that lived in the shadows. Suddenly, a blinding light pierced the dark, the basement revealing twisted remnants of the past, a grim tableau of forgotten sacrifices. Staring back at him were faces contorted in agony. Trapped forever in this twilight existence, he stumbled backward, fear gripping his soul as his mind broke apart like glass. "No, get away," he yelled, but the darkness lunged closer, pulling him toward the macabre sight. In that moment of horror, one final truth shattered his sanity. It was never about saving his children. It was about saving himself. The basement door slammed shut, locking him away. The echoes of the past closed in, drowning out everything except the truth that hell had no ending, and he was just the next prisoner in its unholy game. What awaited him behind the next shadow? Was this just the beginning of his nightmare? The moment the door slammed shut, a haunting silence engulfed the basement. Alex's breath caught in his throat, desperation clawing at his insides. He pressed himself against the door, the cold wood seeping through his clothes. With trembling hands, he fumbled for his phone, praying for a glimmer of light. Only the screen's dim glow reflected the horror around him. Shadows danced, twisting and morphing into shapes that whispered old tales of anguish. Alex's pulse raced. Every thud in the silence echoed like a funeral drum. He looked around. There was no escape in sight. The twisted faces that had momentarily haunted him were now mere blurry impressions in his mind. Should he have fled? No turning back now. Stay focused, he muttered to himself, trying to shake off the creeping dread. Find a way out. As he turned, the air thickened, a palpable force pushing back against him. A shiver crept down his spine. A faint light beckoned from the far corner, illuminating fragments of a long-abandoned floor strewn with forgotten relics, rusted tools, brittle bones. Each crumbled memory whispered warnings he didn't want to hear. Driven by both terror and curiosity, he moved toward the glow. The source flickered through a ragged hole in the wall, an old, moth-eaten curtain fluttering slightly, as if breathing on its own. What lay beyond? He reached out, brushing the curtain aside. His mind swirled with visions of what could be waiting on the other side, a way out, or something worse. The moment he stepped through the opening, he felt the temperature plummet further. Beyond the curtain was a dimly lit room filled with ominous shadows. Broken machinery lay still, as though cursed. A strange hum resonated through the gloom. As his eyes adjusted to the light, He saw the walls plastered with photographed snapshots of families, smiling faces, some even resembling his own children. More disturbing were the dates scrawled at the bottom, decades of agony preceded by every innocent face. The realization sank in like a stone. He was not the first, nor would he be the last to enter this hell. With renewed urgency, Alex felt the weight of the past crowding in, suffocating him. He needed to understand it was about more than escaping. It was about breaking this cycle. Suddenly, a shift in the shadows caught his eye. The curtain behind him fluttered violently, slamming shut as a swarm of whispers engulfed him, swirling with the urgency of impending doom. "Help us!" A collective chorus from beyond, echoing despair and desperation. "What do you want?" Alex shouted, his voice breaking through the eerie soundscape. There was a pause, and then from the corner, a figure emerged, features obscured by darkness. Just as fear gripped him, he discerned the outline of what appeared to be a child. "Daddy?" The voice was tiny, lost and broken. Alex's heart dropped as he rushed forward, the air thickening and morphing again. "Where are you?" he cried, searching frantically, but the child flickered like a flame, dissipating with each moment. A dark laughter erupted, vibrating through the basement. Suddenly, the shadows twisted tighter, spinning around him, strangling his breath. "Join us," they coaxed. Their voices turning silk into chains, he stumbled back, snatching at the knife of hope lodged deep in his gut. "No, I want tea," he shouted against the darkness, his pulse racing. But as memories of his own children consumed him, doubt poisoned the air. Every second stretched painfully, every breath filled with dread. Was it too late to save them? Or was he already too far lost himself? Then, just as despair threatened to engulf him entirely, a piercing scream sliced through the darkness, a familiar, wretched cry. His children. "Alex!" they called, now louder, frantic. He charged toward the sound, his courage reignited, but the walls pulsed like a living creature, shifting, trapping him in a nightmare he couldn't escape. Where were they? With every step, the dread enveloped tighter. Time was running out, but now he understood something: they weren't just lost. They were part of this cursed cycle. As he raced toward the sound, he couldn't shake the feeling that each step might seal his fate. What kind of sacrifice awaited him on the other side? Would he unleash a darkness far worse than his nightmares? The darkness clung to Alex like a suffocating blanket, pulling him down as he stumbled through the shifting shadows. Each desperate breath grew heavier, and the weight of his heartbreak threatened to crush him. His children's voices rang out again, piercing through the haze of despair, but they felt so far away, almost like echoes from another time. "Hold on," he called, his voice thin and shaky. But the walls moved, twisting around him like a nightmare in motion. He felt as if he were standing in a collapsing tunnel, the corridor of shadows bending and constricting. Each pulse pulled tighter, and he could hear the laughter echo guttural, malicious, a sound that dripped with malice, beckoning him deeper. "Help us!" they cried once more, their voices wrapping around him. The momentary glimmer of hope felt like a cruel joke, one that spat directly in his face. "Go back," he shouted, but the voices melded into one, a cacophony twisted together with the laughter of 1,000 lost souls. Racing forward, Alex's heart pounded in his chest, urging him on despite the chaos. He had to reach them. Each step felt like a cost, as if each part of him was being drained away, each foot pushing through thickening dread. Suddenly, through the veil of madness, he caught a glimpse of movement, a flicker, a blur, and then nothing. The darkness swallowed it whole, leaving behind only silence. It made him rethink every step he'd taken, each decision that led him here, as if a shadow beast awaited his miscalculation, the final flaw in his resolve. The hum grew louder, reverberating through his bones. "Alex!" they screamed again. "Where are you?" he cried, desperation twisting his throat. "Daddy!" they wept, and the plaintive call slashed through him. He felt tears prick his eyes, burning against the grip of terror. Could that voice really belong to his children? Or was it yet another trick from the shadows? He pressed forward, forcing himself through despair and doubt, and reached a room filled with twisted, rusted machinery. Broken tools illuminated by the sickly green light flickered eerily. The air was thick and smelled of decay, the kind of scent that lingered long after the dead had gone. Suddenly, a shape flickered in the corner of his vision, a pale, ghostly figure, barely there, but he could feel its energy, a pull that was stronger than the darkness surrounding him. It was small, about the height of a child. He stepped closer, heart pounding in his ears. "Is that you?" he whispered, terrified to voice his hope. The figure turned, only to vanish in a flash of shadows. "No, no, come back." His voice cracked, but all that answered him was silence. And then the whispers started again, crawling into his mind, suffocating him. Join us, they echoed, the despair wrapping around him like chains. Suddenly, from behind him, the curtain he had brushed aside burst open once more, a gust of icy wind rushing through the room, sending shivers through his spine. "Daddy, help us!" It was both of their voices, now clear and sharp. His breath hitched as urgency ignited his veins. Gathering every ounce of courage, Alex dashed towards the sound, plunging into the cold wind, the world warping around him. This was it. He could either find them or become the next whisper in the dark. As he surged forward, he became acutely aware that the darkness was alive, feeding off his fear which had grown exponentially. He had to confront this evil. The cycle had to end with him. But before he could break through, a hand grasped his shoulder, a grip cold and dead like the touch of death itself. "Alex," it croaked through cracked lips. He turned, dread curling in his stomach like a serpent. It was the last thing he expected to see. Could he truly face what came next? What new horror awaited him from the shadows? The chill spread through Alex as he turned, his heart hammering in his chest. He had hoped to find his children, but what he found sent terror coursing through his veins. The figure was there, but not wholly human. A dying, hollow version of the woman he once loved. Her sunken eyes glimmered with unshed tears, her mouth twisted in an agonizing smile, like a mask worn to hide the truth. "Mom," he breathed, clutching his head as memories cascaded through his mind, laughter around the table, bedtime stories, and whispers of love. But this was a shadow of her, a mockery of his past. "Help us, Alex," she rasped, voice brittle as glass. "It's so dark, so cold. Where are the kids?" Panic clawed at his throat. "Join us," she said, her voice echoing back like a mournful wail. "You must. There's no escaping." He staggered back, ignoring the sting of her words. "You're not real. This is a trick." With that, he turned on his heel, ready to flee, but her hand shot out, grasping his arm with an iron grip. "Please," the whisper turned sharp, almost angry. "You don't understand. They're lost, and so will you be." The machinery around them groaned and shuddered. The oppressive darkness thickened as if it had lungs, drawing breaths of its own. Shadows twisted on the walls, forming phantoms that danced just beyond sight. The whispers intensified, filling the room like a swarm of restless insects. "Children," he yelled, desperate to drown out the growing terror ripping at his sanity. He could hear their cries, could feel their little hands wanting to grasp his. "I'm coming." The figure of his wife stared at him, frustration burning in her dead eyes. "You're too late. They're already part of this nightmare. There's nothing you can do." "No." The denial exploded from him like a shot of adrenaline. "I can save them." As he bolted down the corridor, the shadows surged forward, closing in. Specters of despair with ghastly faces and long, spindly fingers reached out, clawing at his flesh. He sprinted through the darkness, each footfall echoing his terror, each heartbeat pounding with the urgency of a last chance. Ahead, the voices of his children called, now filled with sobs that broke his heart. He crashed through another door, pushing against the weight of despair. What lay beyond looked like a child's room, but upside down. The walls were painted in faded colors, toys scattered like forgotten bits of joy. A chilling laugh filled the space. It was not an innocent child's laugh. It was a taunting, disembodied cackle that resonated through his bones. "Welcome home, Daddy," a voice whispered almost sweetly from the shadows. "We've been waiting for you." Alex froze, dread slithering through him. The children were there, their shapes shifting in the dim light, but their faces contorted into masks of anguish. They reached for him, but their bodies remained bound to the darkness like marionettes to invisible strings. "Please, let them go," he gasped out, panic squeezing his chest. "I'll do anything. Just let them go." Their laughter echoed again, bursting forth from all sides a dangerous rhythm that throbbed against his skull, each note taunting him. They were lost, yet he felt the cruel grip of hope still pulling at him, igniting a primal urge to save them before it was too late. Then, the room shifted once more. The colors distorted and melded into an abyss, swallowing everything he thought he knew. As he grasped at the fabric of reality, the world twisted away, leaving him alone, suspended in fragility. The shadows laughed louder than ever, a confirmation of his growing dread. "What is happening?" he shouted. "Where are you?" But the darkness surged, and their faces vanished, replaced by cold laughter echoing endlessly in the void. Then came the chilling truth. Maybe they weren't lost at all. Maybe they didn't want to be found. What new depths of despair would he have to face to uncover the truth? A spine-chilling silence enveloped Alex, pressing in on him like a vice. Darkness swirled around, a tangible entity that played tricks on his mind. The echoes of laughter faded, replaced by the sound of his ragged breath, a panicked mantra repeating the names of his children like an incantation. "Lucy, Max, I'm coming," he shouted, though he felt his voice tremble. A wave of nausea crashed over him as he cowered against an unseen force. He tried to blink away the void, wishing desperately for even a glimmer of light. Suddenly, the dark began to shift. In the distance, a flicker of something bright reached out to him. He stumbled towards it, ignoring the warnings flashing in the back of his mind. What if it was a lie, a cruel trick to draw him further into the abyss? Hope, however dim, urged him on. As he drew closer, the light morphed into the faint outline of a door cracked open just enough to emit a slim stream of warmth. He reached forward, seeking the reassurance of solidity. "Please let this lead to them," he muttered, pushing the door wider. The room beyond was different, alive with color, the walls adorned with his children's drawings. Everything was just as he remembered. It felt too good to be true. But just as the sweetness of nostalgia bled into the air, the laughter erupted again, now more sinister than before. "Daddy, don't you want to play?" A voice called, sweet yet chilling. His heart dropped. "No, I want my children," he shouted into the blossoming chaos. In response, shadows leaped to life, their long, crooked fingers dancing at the periphery. Alex suppressed a shudder and steeled himself, forcing every ounce of his being toward the door. But the laughter grew louder, no longer filling him with warmth. Every note was now laced with malice. He turned to flee, and the shadows lunged, arms stretching, closing in around him. Desperately, he stumbled backward through the doorframe, falling into another room. The vivid paintings faded into a gray landscape, the walls closing around him like the jaws of a trap. "Look around, Daddy," a voice cooed. "Everything is how you left it." With fear pounding in his chest, he abruptly stood. Sweat dripped down his brow, his clothes clinging to him like a second skin. Every instinct screamed for him to turn around, but it was as if an unseen string held him in place. Slowly, he turned to face the laughter. The figures emerged. His children, or jumble of shapes that twisted into shadows of their former selves. Their eyes were empty, hollow voids of despair that echoed the same chilling cackle he had heard before. "Join us," they chanted in unison, hands reaching out with an otherworldly allure. "Stay with us forever. Please, please." He gasped, a lump forming in his throat. "I just want you back. I'll do anything." The shadows danced around them, intensifying, and he pulled back, shaking his head as he stumbled backward. "No, you can't have me." Suddenly, a cacophony of screams erupted, distorting into a haunting symphony as shadows morphed into desperate faces, faces that seemed familiar. The walls pulsed around him, the air thick with anguish and dread. The echo of his wife's desperate plea rang through his thoughts, drowning him, suffocating him. Then the world around him cracked like glass, splintering into a kaleidoscope of torment. "Give in," a whisper slithered in his ear. "You can't escape." With an explosion, the shadows surged forward, overwhelming him, suffocating him, plunging him into a chasm of despair. And then, just as quickly, everything went black. A weight pressed down on his chest, panic rising. A flicker of something caught his eye. Was it a light, or a figment of the ever-encroaching darkness? "Help me," he gasped, his voice barely a whisper, a final faint spark of hope against the rising tide of despair. But as the shadows closed in for the kill, One question repeated in his mind like a drumbeat. What if the only way out was to yield? Alex's breathing was shallow, a frantic rhythm in the suffocating void. The weight on his chest vanished, but the panic clawed at him from the insides, demanding escape. Yet the darkness spoke. It wrapped around him, pulling him into its cold embrace, whispering lies of safety. Then, a heartbeat, a solid thrum echoing through endless blackness. He clung to it like a lifeline, pushing himself forward. As he fought against the shadows closing in, he stumbled into the remains of a familiar place. Fragments of his home, once a sanctuary, now twisted memories that sang with sorrow. The living room, the kitchen, every corner invoked a haunting familiarity that twisted like a knife. Lucy, Max. He called again, his voice strained. Please, answer me. The shadows lingered, watching, waiting. They flickered around him, faces forming as if from smoke. There was Mom, Dad, and just barely, he saw their smiles fading into grimaces of despair. Join us, Alex, they begged, their voices echoing in age-old sadness. They reached out, twisted hands inviting him to step closer, to lose himself in the memories. It's so peaceful here, don't be afraid. No. Fear gripped him tighter. You're not them. You're not real. The shadows thickened, coalescing, swirling, etching despair into every fiber of his being. He stumbled backward, but the walls seemed to lean in, suffocating him. A new sound joined the cacophony, the soft, trepidatious giggle of his kids. It resonated in his ears like a dissonant melody, sweet and sinister. Daddy, come play. They materialized from the void, phantoms of the children he loved. Their laughter twisted into shrieks that pierced the suffocating horror around him. Their small bodies were shadowed, foreboding. Eyes wide and hollow, they beckoned him closer, enveloped in darkness. Stay with us forever, they sang, their voices melting into one another, a chilling harmony that doused his heart in ice. Stop. No, he screamed, the rising tide of terror crashing against his sanity. The laughter roared, and for a moment, the world exploded into bright flashes of love, joy, family, interspersed with something darker, deeper. A gnawing feeling welled up from his gut. Had he missed something? Had he not done enough to protect them? A cold draft swept through the room, whispering secrets he wasn't ready to hear. Shadows slithered closer, grinding down on him, the air thickening with despair. Alex barely breathed when a new presence materialized. A massive figure emerged in an amorphous cloud of darkness, eyes glowing like coals in the night. Your sins have brought you here, it rumbled, voice deep and cold. You wanted to save them, but only they can save you now. What did that mean? Confusion wrapped around his mind like a fog as he staggered backward. The glow from the figure illuminated grotesque images on the walls, images of Alex himself, captured in quiet moments with his children, but in each scene, something was wrong. There was a shadow lurking. Could the shadows be something he had brought upon himself? The moments when he was too consumed by work, too focused on causing pain to his own soul, while neglecting their joy? Wake up, he whispered to himself, desperation thick in his voice. Wake up, please. The figure edged forward, extending a hand, and behind it, all the laughter crescendoed into a painful scream, echoing heartbreak and despair that clawed at his sanity. Just then, the walls began to buckle, the house crashing around him as a white light pulsed from behind the figure. It beckoned to Alex, a safety he craved but feared. Could this truly be an escape? Or would this new light be another trap? He was caught between two worlds, reality and some twisted nightmare. And above the noise, a new sound emerged, the soft voice of Lucy. Daddy, we need you. Could he leave them? The choice tore at his heart. As shadows circled, ready to drag him back, he was left with a singular question. Would he dare take the leap into light, facing whatever awaited on the other side? This wasn't just about saving himself. It was about saving them. If he had a chance left. Before he could decide, the light pulsed faster, enticing. But then, the darkness lunged, and with it came another question. What if yielding wasn't the end, but the start of something darker? The light engulfed him, a blinding flash of hope and fear intertwining. Alex felt himself pulled through, caught in a swirl of energy that crackled with an unsettling aura. Shadows clawed at his body, resisting, pulling him back into their familiar darkness. The grasp was relentless, but the light was brighter, an intoxicating force that urged him forward. Just as suddenly as it began, he felt a jolt. He landed hard on cold, cracked concrete. His heart raced as he scrambled to his feet, taking in his surroundings. Gone were the twisted remnants of his home. Instead, an expansive warehouse loomed above him, its high ceilings lost in shadow. The air was thick with dust, and it smelled of stale metal and mold, an oppressive reminder of disuse. "Hello?" he called, his voice cracking in the emptiness. Silence answered him, a vast void echoing his fear. The darkness unfurled around him, but he pushed down the crushing feeling rising within. He remembered Lucy's voice, the desperate call of his children. They needed him. He couldn't falter now. The warehouse felt alive, watching, the very walls seeming to breathe. Blockading any escape, he moved deeper into the abyss, dodging broken pallets and stacked boxes. Echoes of whispers flickered through the air, blurring the boundaries between illusion and reality. They tickled the back of his mind, memories he couldn't quite grasp. But something else lurked there, two darker impulses, raw and jagged. As he stepped through the maze of shadows, something caught his eye, a flicker of light near the far end. Heart pounding, he approached, hoping it was a door, a way out. It glimmered like a promise, but as he drew closer, the light flickered and dimmed, revealing a rusty door, half open, creaking ominously. It invited him like a trap, whispering sweetly, but he hesitated. The fear slithered back, wrapping around him, a familiar suffocation. The whispers grew. Stay with us." They were his children's voices. Or were they? No, it was the shadows taunting him, weaving a tapestry of despair. "Shut up," he shouted, clenching his fists. He couldn't lose this fight. He pushed through the door, stepping into a small, dimly lit room. A flickering bulb hung from the ceiling, barely illuminating the scattered items littered across a desk: papers, photographs. And then, a chilling gasp escaped his lips. One photograph was pinned to the wall. He stepped closer, his breath hitching as he recognized it. A family photo from years ago. There they were, Lucy and Max, smiling brightly. But beside them, a shadow loomed, unmistakable, a dark figure tracing the outline of their happiness. No, no. Panic swelled as he looked around the room. His heart sank when he noticed the walls were covered with similar photos, all perfectly preserved, but with shadows intruding, each one darker than the last. His pulse quickened, realization dawning on him. Each picture depicted moments he had been too absorbed in his own struggles to notice. The shadows weren't just lurking, they were feeding on his neglect, his guilt. Alex staggered back, pressing his palm against his forehead, desperately trying to quiet the mounting dread. "What are you?" But the shadows were already deepening, coalescing into that dark figure he had seen earlier. It stood there, solid and menacing, embodying everything he had tried to escape. "Your sins have drawn you here." Alex's voice rumbled, thick and slow, like a rolling storm. "You cannot save them from here." "No, I want to lose them." He thrust his hand out, searching for any weapon, any way to fight back, but his fingers grazed only cold metal, rusty chains, shackles held in place by time and despair. The figure advanced, closer, an all-consuming void. "But you are lost already. They need to be freed, and you have a choice to make." Before Alex could process the malevolent offer lurking in those words, the warehouse trembled. The shadows swirled violently, echoing the pain of countless others trapped in their grasp. It felt like a warning, the ground beneath him threatening to swallow him whole. And just then, through the chaos, came a clear voice. "Daddy, please." His vision sharpened. The sound rooted him to the ground, igniting a fierce determination. Was it really Lucy? Was this another trick? Suddenly, the warehouse's walls began to fracture, light breaking through in jagged bursts. Would he step into the unknown again? Would he confront whatever lay ahead, risking everything to find his family? The choice was falling into his lap, and the shadows circled with a promise of terrifying truth. The echoes of his children's voices turned to screams, a chant that resonated deep. All he had to do was choose, confront his sins or surrender to endless darkness. Which would lead him to freedom? Or would they both lead to his undoing? He didn't think. He leapt. With a desperate breath, Alex sprinted through the now fractured doorway, bracing against the onslaught of light and shadow. He could barely see the edges of his own reality as the darkness around him pulsed like a living thing, clawing and snapping. If Lucy was really out there, he'd fight through anything to reach her. But as he darted ahead, he stumbled. The floor shifted beneath his feet, cracked concrete morphed into something squelchy and wet, like flesh. He barely managed to keep his balance. A pain shot through his ankle as he landed awkwardly. "Daddy!" The voice slid through the air, piercing his heart. His children were closer, but a new sound shot through the warehouse, a low growl, rumbling like a hungry beast hidden deep in the shadows. The growl was so close, he could almost feel its hot breath against his neck. No, no, no. He scrambled forward, fists clenched, fighting against the primal surge of fear. He focused on the voices, echoing his name, running deeper into the darkness. The walls lined with haunting photographs warped as he rushed past. Faces twisted in pain, shadows looping around their eyes, a gallery of lost souls. A chilling realization gripped him. Were these the remnants of past dwellers, drawn in by their guilt, much like his own yo-yo of despair? It felt like the shadows were alive, brushing against him like icy fingers, whispering his failures, his regrets. Memories exploded around him, snaps of laughter, joyous birthdays turning into the icy void of neglected moments. He shoved them away, frustrated, demanding to hear Lucy's voice over the screams of the damned. "Where are you?" The floor quaked again, a seismic shift of darkness almost toppling him onto the ground. Alex stumbled, scraping his palms against the concrete. The growl returned, now closer, reminder of a malevolence lurking just beyond his vision. His breath came in ragged gasps. Every step felt as if he were being pulled back into the shadows, and he could feel the weight of the figure lurking behind him, its presence a cold specter. "Daddy!" That voice, so real, so desperate, cut through everything, gripped him tightly. "Help me." He could see a flicker of light ahead, a pale luminescence, pulsating like a heartbeat. He surged forward, desperation lending him energy. But just as he reached the glowing glow, he staggered back as a horrific sight greeted him. Before him stood a mirror, but not one he recognized. The image reflected back was twisted. The dark figure now seemed to merge with his own outline, an image of himself engulfed by shadows, eyes glowing with hatred and despair. "No," he cried out, feeling the urge to shatter the glass between them. But then came that voice again, gentle, familiar, breaking through the madness. "Daddy, is that you?" The reflection wavered, and Alex staggered back, heart pounding, a raw feeling of hope mixed with terror. What if this was the last chance? Stay with me," the dark figure whispered, its voice now dripping with malice, like thick syrup. "You can't help them, Alex. You won't be able to find them through your light. Join me now." He ground his teeth, refusing to give in. But the darkness encircled him, pressing like a vice. He was trapped in a battle between his love for his family and the heavy pull of regret. As he pounded his fists against the mirror, the room began to shake, splintering the reflections. It felt like time was unraveling, moments of his life cascading like shadows around him. A blinding flash erupted from the mirror, forcing him to shield his eyes. When he opened them, he found himself standing in a different part of the warehouse, a darkened hall lined with doors, each one vibrating with whispers of lost souls. "Daddy, please help us." They were all around him, echoes of the past and the future intertwined, pulling him in every direction. He hesitated, the choices overwhelming. Should he choose the door on his left, which felt almost familiar, the sound of laughter slipping through the cracks? Or should he confront the shadows that roiled behind the door? On his right, where the growl simmered resentfully, the air felt thicker, heavy with choices and the weight of consequence. Which door would he choose? And when he opened it, would he find the truth, or his final undoing? The air thickened as Alex stood before the two doors, each whispering his name, pulling him toward different fates. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes, summoning the last remnants of resolve. The voices, twisted and plaintive, battled for his attention. "Lucy, Max," he called out, desperation clawing at him. The ghostly sounds twirled like a whirlwind of memories, sweet moments tainted with dread. "I'm coming for you." With a jolt of adrenaline, he shoved open the door to the right, the one where the darkness churned, growling like a hungry beast. As he stepped through, a wave of shadow engulfed him, and for a moment, he felt like he was sinking into an abyss. The room was dim, drenched in a gloomy haze. Shadows danced at the periphery, darting in and out of sight, their voices like brittle wire against his skin. But he pressed on, the sound of his children's cries piercing through the smog. "Help us," they called, their voices stronger now, energizing him against the weight of despair. He felt the shadows tugging at him, desperately trying to ensnare him in their grasp, to pull him into the endless cycle of pain. "No," he shouted, shaking his head violently, straining against their call. "I won't let you take me." He charged forward, driven by a primal force of love that ignited fire within him. The walls around him contorted and closed, trying to deter him. Yet Alex focused on the fading light deep within, the source of his hope, his children's laughter swirling just out of reach. He sprinted toward it, fueled by unwavering determination. Stumbling upon a small flicker, the dying embers of a once vibrant room flooded his senses. It felt wrong. The atmosphere turned heavier, festered with despair and anguish. Photographs plastered against the walls the faces of countless families, all smiling, while shadows crept silently into their memories, oozing into their hearts. But in the midst of the chaos, there they were, Lucy and Max, their laughter echoing. "Daddy!" The joy in their voices was reflected in desperate cries for help, stirring something deep inside him. "Stay with me. I'm almost there," he shouted, pushing forward, knowing they were close. Before him stood a dark figure, an embodiment of despair. "Join us," it hissed, its voice like ice scraping against rock. Suddenly, the walls shuddered, and Alex felt the chilling truth seep into his bones. "You can't save them," a scream erupted from his chest, ripping through the blackness. He would not yield to that voice. "I can do this," he roared defiantly. Sweeping away memories of missed moments and regrets, he pressed against the darkness, feeling it recede, almost as if it could sense his resolve. "Lucy, Max," he cried, lunging toward the shimmering light glowing faintly at the end of the corridor. Momentarily, the shadows swirled back, howling in fury, but Alex powered through, each step a fight against the suffocating despair threatening to crush him. The light grew brighter, illuminating the room beyond. He reached for it, stretching his fingers toward hope, and then he was there, bursting through the final barrier separating him from his children. In an explosion of warmth and brightness, Alex staggered into the room, where Lucy and Max were trapped, tethered to the shadows. Their little forms trembled, eyes wide and filled with fear. "Daddy!" they cried in unison. "Hold on!" he exclaimed, rushing to them. The chains binding their souls tugged at him, but he pushed against the shadows encircling them. "I will not leave you." He knelt, grasping their tiny hands with fierce determination. Their warmth seeped through the shadowy chill. Suddenly, the light blossomed brighter, and the room shifted, blending warmth and doom into a singular vision. "Get out of here," the specter wailed, reaching for Alex. But with his children's heartbeats guiding him, he became a whirlwind of energy, pulling Lucy and Max close, igniting the light within. "Together now," he shouted, and they all shouted in unison against the darkness, their voices a thunderous cascade that swept through the room. Suddenly, everything shifted. The shadows twisted, shrieking as they unraveled. Lights surged and spilled across the room, enveloping them in a cocoon of safety. The shadows screamed, contorting into nothingness as warmth enveloped them in a fierce embrace. In that moment of overwhelming radiance, the air shifted, a palpable weight lifting from their souls. Alex opened his eyes, blinking against the brightness. Everything felt alive, infused with new energy. "Daddy?" Lucy's voice broke through the brightness, sweet and familiar. "I'm here," Alex breathed, his chest tightening with joy. He glanced around, no shadows, no ghosts, only the warmth of love filling the space. "We're together now," he whispered. As they began to pull away from the remnants of the darkness, that haunting place, the warehouse began to dissolve around them, pieces collapsing into nothingness. They would not be trapped anymore. With his children in tow, Alex stepped into the bright light, illuminated by hope, love, and finally free from the haunted grip that had consumed him. As they emerged, the world outside burst forth in color and sound, alive with possibility. Daddy? Lucy whispered, squeezing his hand tighter. Yes, I'm here. Always, he smiled, the weight of guilt and sorrow lifting at last, replaced by the familiar warmth of family. They turned toward the horizon, a new dawn breaking, signifying freedom from the shadows of the past. In that moment, he knew he'd fight any darkness to protect them. They were safe now. It was time to heal, and as they stepped forward, hand in hand, the warehouse behind them faded into a forgotten memory, ready to return to the shadows from whence it came. Thank you for sharing this terrifying journey with Alex. What did you think of the ending? Did it surprise you? You need to subscribe to the channel right now to catch all the future exclusive stories. Smash that like button and help our community grow. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories. I want to hear your thoughts. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.